This is Izmir. After Istanbul and Ankara, Izmir is the third biggest city in Turkey in terms of population and cultural impact. Izmir is one of the oldest cities in the Mediterranean basin, having been inhabited continuously for 3 to 7,000 years, depending on how you look at it. It's unknown who settled the area first, but archaeological research shows a degree of Mycenaean influence in its ancient years. The city was then captured by Lydians, destroyed by the Persians, refounded by Alexander the Great, and then bequeathed to the Romans in 133 BCE. Roman rule in the city lasted a good millennia, but of course, there's an obvious nuance to the statement. Starting from the 5th century onwards, they were historiographically deemed distinct from the Rome-based Roman state. This distinction largely comes down to three things. First is the fact that the eastern half of the Roman Empire had been administratively different from the western half ever since one of the good emperors decided that the empire was too big to effectively control from one city. Second is the adoption of Greek language and Hellenistic customs by the eastern half, and third is the differing interpretations of Christianity by the churches of Constantinople and Rome. The details are not important. What's important for our story is that most Greek-speaking people today identify the Byzantine Empire as their ancestral polity. In 563, this Byzantine Empire, headed by Justinian the Great at the time, received delegations from Askal, head of the first tribe of the Onok, or Mushibi tribal federation. The Onok was a collection of tribal Turkic peoples who lived in the western edge of the Western Turkic Kaghanate, also known as the Gökturks. This diplomatic contact between the Byzantine Empire and the Gökturks is very important because it marks the first time these two very particular ethno-linguistic people groups interacted with each other on a state level. A wave of romance that will sweep the world in the 1700s will result in those groups being retroactively simplified as the Turks and the Greeks, and this is how their story started. At that point, Turkic people were Central Asian nomads. Nomads move. If you're a militaristic society, on top of being a nomad, then you tend to move and conquer. So that's what they did. When the Turco-Persian Seljuk Empire started making advances into Anatolia, many Turkic peoples also started to flock there. Bit by bit, Turkic people and their rulers started to enter into the Anatolian peninsula, capturing cities and founding settlements. This led to the Byzantine Empire panicking and asking for help from the Catholics, but no luck. A couple of crusades and 300 years later, Constantinople fell to the Ottomans. The Ottomans were a royal family, not an ethnicity. The abstract idea of ethnicity didn't exist as vividly at the time of Constantinople conquest as it does today. But it was festering. The largely Greek-speaking peoples who identified themselves as Romans expressed a desire for their Genos to regain control of Constantinople. Genos became nation, Ottoman became Turk, Roman became Hellene, and eventually, as was the wont of the 19th century, a revolution broke out. This revolution was more or less a catalyst for the Ottoman Empire's century-long collapse, and by the end, the Turks and the Greeks stood on the opposite sides of the Aegean, with their feet entrenched in their nation-states.
We have exciting promotions available for you today, as today is Black Friday. Amazing discounts on perfumes, cosmetics, and gadgets. So if you would like to have a look to the full in-flight catalog, we kindly ask you to download it from the official Ryanair app or by scanning the QR code.
This is Athens. After some consideration, newly independent and newly Hellene Greek state picked here as their capital. The idea was clearly meant to evoke a line of succession between this Greek state and the pre-Roman Greek identity, as the city of Athens was neither an important economic center of Greek activity as Izmir was, nor as messianically coveted as Constantinople during Ottoman times. The thing that defined Athens has always been, and continues to be, is its classical past. Once it was decided that Athens was going to be the capital, it also naturally followed that Athens should look the part. So the city started sporting some impressive looking neoclassical buildings, hosted the first modern Olympics, and when the Turks and the Greeks decided to forcibly speed up the great unmixing of populations after Ottoman Empire's collapse, Athens became the primary destination of ethnically Greek Anatolian displaced peoples. One of those people was a girl called Hariklia, born in the year 1950 to Izmir refugees. Hariklia found her way to Athens at the age of 8 after the loss of her father. She had a knack for the performing arts, and it soon proved impossible to keep her away from it. 4 years after Ariklia was born and 4 years before she moved to Athens, the Denizli-based couple of Sami and Şehriban Yıldırım welcomed the little girl in their lives. They called her Sezen, and just like Ariklia, Sezen also moved to a bigger city when she was a kid. In Sezen's case, this was Izmir. Again, just like Ariklia, Sezen also had a thing for the performance arts and sung in secret from his parents who wanted her to have a steady job. But there was no stopping her. Both of these girls became famous under different names. Sezen made her name as Sezen Aksu, Ariklia became Haris Alexiou, and they both ended up as one of the most influential singers of their generation, if not of all time. This is taken from a special concert in 1999, planned to be the first leg of a two-part event. In 1999, both Turkey and Greece suffered from devastating earthquakes, and this concert was designed to help out with relief.
Αν ήτανε το έδαφος σου πρόσφορο, θα σου φτιάχνα μια πίστα από φόσφορο, με 12 διαδρόμους, 12 τρόμους, με βίσματα με τάσεις φορητές, με βίσματα και αεροπήρανες. Deniyor hasretine sevgin sevgisiz ayrılıktan daha zor. Dilediğin kadar acıt canımı, yokluğunda var.
The song these two legends are singing is important. It was originally performed by Haris Alexiou under the name of Mia Pista Apo Fosforo, meaning a stage of phosphorus. Aksu later covered the song calling Her Şey Yak, meaning burn everything. And this is not new to Alexiou. Her songs have been and will be covered by an incredibly wide range of Turkish artists like Zülfü Livaneli or Yeni Türkü or Müslüm Gürses and Gripin, adding to the large range of cultural items that exist simultaneously in both languages, like for example the folk song Drama Köprüsü,
Atma ritini Ebre Hasan
or the shadow puppet Karagözis or Karagöz, and even ideas for food like filling big peppers with rice. And this brings us to the title of the video: the special relationship between the Greeks and the Turks. I don't know if there are any two cultures that have interacted with each other the way these two have, having lived side by side for more than 8 centuries, 5 or 6 of which under the same polity. Their cultural imprint bears incredible similarities with, yet somehow developed in opposition to, each other. See, this is the thing. The current polity incarnations of these people groups both establish their nation states in deep existential opposition to the other, meaning they both used the other as a them that needed to exist so that an us also could. As Genos and Ejdat turned into nations, not being a Turk was a big component of being a Greek, as Greek independence and Greek identity developed in opposition to the Turkish-speaking Muslim rule, and not being Greek was a big component of being a Turk. as a new Turkish nation-state explicitly rooted its post-Ottoman identity in the 1920s war they waged against the ethnically Greek Byzantine revivalist Megali Idea. So in some sense, these might be the only two countries that consider their independence as something they gained from the other. This is why it's hard to explain the extent of this special relationship. There have been wars, ethnic tensions, political intrigue, but as a very smart writer once wrote, there's never any connection without confrontation. Right? In our great big digital age, where stateless currencies fast become the norm and culture is increasingly produced over and across ethno-linguistic barriers, the romantic ideal of a nation that peoples of the 19th and 20th centuries fought and killed over seems dim. Disparities that people groups build entire identities around feel more and more superficial, and as the world gets smaller, massive bodies of water that separate the us from the them stop seeming like great burning chasms and more like stages of phosphorus, I suppose. As the wind blows and the stage gets thinner, squabbles built up in the modern age shrink in comparison to shared folklore dating back centuries. One might sing Onira and the other might sing Allahum. It doesn't matter. The sentiment carries across without friction. Aksu and Alexiou in this concert, therefore, are just writing another chapter in this hundreds of years old book filled with confrontation and connection. I'm personally excited to see what the next chapters will say. See you next time.